biggest confrontations you can ever have is your own imminent death, right? So when you need to think of that, you need to think of life and say, well, have I lived a fulfilling life? Have I achieved what it is that I really want to achieve in life? Have I really found purpose in what it is that I tried to achieve?
Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into tonight's session. I'm your moderator for tonight, and my name is Thurinder, one of the many volunteers at PDF tonight that made tonight's webinar possible. For those unfamiliar with PDF, or Professional Development Forum, it was established to help diverse professionals find fulfillment in the modern workplace. We are a group of volunteers eager to help others by giving them access to the knowledge, mindset, and network to become the best version of themselves. Before we begin, just a few bit of housekeeping rules. May I please ask everyone to update your names and turn on your camera if you can. This will allow us to better connect. And during the webinar, please feel free to ask any question from Ali at any point. Please put any questions in the chat box and we will ask you to unmute and ask that question. A little bit about Ali, but he started his education in medicine and surgery and has degrees in engineering and aviation. He has an MBA and some of the high security certifications in the industry. He's a startup founder and has held multiple regional and global roles, including being a CISO, a CIO, and head of ICT. He's also led key business units in major national and international organizations such as Cisco and IBM. He's also a startup founder and a father of 3 and loves to try new things. I have known Ali for a few years now, and he has an amazing ability to bring people together and on a journey. He cares about others and he inspires leadership in them. So today's topic is about growth mindset and how you can succeed in any role. And there is no better person to talk about it than someone like Ali. So Ali, over to you.
Thank you, Thurinder, and for those great words. And look, I'm really honoured and humbled to be participating in PDF. I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. There's definitely a need for it in our society today. So if I'd known you were such a great marketing person, Thurinder, I would have had you into a different role. But no, thank you, Thurinder, for that great introduction. So look, the way that I'm going to conduct this today, it's very interactive and open. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to set the stage just by explaining what growth mindset is, which I'm sure a lot of you would already know, but just to frame the rest of the conversation. I'm going to talk briefly about some stories from my life that hopefully you could benefit from. So the whole objective here is around potentially sharing some ideas that you might find applicable in your own life or that can resonate well with you. So I wanted to start by sharing a quote, which is very dear to my heart and one that I always continue talking to my kids about all the time. So it's whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So Henry Ford, great innovator, great thought leader. And, it really does set the tone around what you do in life. And it all starts with having that firm personal belief that you can actually achieve something. So if you don't have that firm belief that you can achieve something, then chances are that you're not going to go and try new things. You're not going to learn new things. You're not going to expand yourself. You're not going to grow. And you're going to stay where you are. So it all starts with that belief and that personal belief and believing in yourself that you can actually achieve what it is that you set your mind out to achieve. If you think, you can picture yourself being something, doing a specific role that you want to do in life or being successful at a specific thing, it all starts with that belief. And once you have that belief, it opens up your mind to the possibility of new trials and attempts and opens up possibilities of things that before were closed to you. So just touching on the growth mindset. So the term growth mindset was popularized by Carol Dweck, who was a professor at Stanford University. And she was doing a lot of study, about 30 years worth of research and development into what makes certain people succeed under change and what makes other people fail and why they do that. So she did a lot of research into this and came up with a concept around a fixed and a growth mindset. So, in a fixed mindset, people generally believe that their talent is static. Their intelligence and their talents are static. They're born with certain capabilities, and those capabilities pretty much stay with them throughout their life. There is little chance to improve on those skills. Any sign of mistakes or failures, they take that as a sign of weakness, right? So there's no learning from those failures that they have, and they always find themselves important to always prove themselves and talk about what they've done, and always list that rather than looking at ways of where they can go, or how they could learn and expand themselves. When we take the growth mindset, it's a very different perspective. So growth mindset, they believe that their most basic capabilities are developed. So intellect can be learned, it can be developed, you can grow on that. Performance is a chance to learn more. Mistakes are opportunities, and failures are opportunities for learning. And there's always, it's important to prove, to improve yourself rather than prove yourself. So, when people believe they can get smarter, they understand that they can put in more effort. When that's coupled with the desire to want to achieve something, you can actually put in the effort and that it actually takes to achieve success in business or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in life. So it leads to more motivation, leads to higher productivity, and a chance to actually expand your horizons. So two other things, and we find this so often, we tend to do it to ourselves as well as triggers within the work environment that we've got. So when we talk about things like labels, when we talk about before around, the saying of Henry Ford, whatever you believe you can or can't do, then you're right. So it's a similar thing when we set negative impacts of labels upon ourselves. So if we say, for example, I'm not good at maths, then chances are you're not going to be good at maths, right? You automatically resist doing those things. You automatically resist trying to be in an environment where you're actually testing out those specific areas. And also, there's no such thing as a pure growth mindset. There are always triggers in an environment where you may have to feel defensive, or you may feel a particular way that sort of prevents you from expanding into those specific areas. So, understanding that there are those triggers in an environment allows us to cope with them and deal with them better, so that when we identify them, we can actually then use them to our benefit rather than to our detriment. So on the left, if we look at the comfort zone, this is where we feel safe and in control, right? This is where we like to be naturally. We don't like to get out of our comfort zone because, we feel that we're okay. But growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone, right? Growth happens in the ride as you grow into that, and you have to go through a range of different areas. So as we go through the fear zone and identify the things that normally resist us from doing things, like lack of self-confidence or finding excuses as to why we're not doing something, or being affected by others' opinion. And then we develop into the learning zone. So the learning zone, when we're there, we're acquiring new skills. As we're acquiring those new skills, we're extending our comfort zone. We're going into areas that traditionally we weren't comfortable with before, but now going through that learning zone, we now have extended that capability and moved on. It allows us to deal with new challenges and problems, and then go into growth, where we start setting new goals for ourselves. We start conquering objectives. We find purpose and meaning in what we do, and we start living our dreams. So this is another very important quote from Jack Canfield I'd like to share with you. So don't worry about failures. Worry about the chances you miss when you don't even try. So it's really important, for us to, when we're looking at failure, there are lessons to be learned in failure. When you're doing things and you fail those things, and then you get up and you try again, if you're not failing, you're not innovating. If you're not innovating, it means you're not trying hard enough. You're not learning new things. You're not moving outside of your comfort zone. You're staying into that comfort zone. So it's really important to learn from failure, to take that on board, learn from those lessons, incorporate those in our lives, and continue to grow. So using failure as an inspiration really is a valuable way to use failure. So I guess I'm going to talk about 3 stories in my life where follow your heart is the first one, seizing opportunities second, and finding your sense of purpose. So my story, and Dorinda talked about some of it. So, I started straight out of school, got into medicine, did 3 years of medicine, decided that medicine wasn't for me, and wasn't my heart wasn't in it. I sort of got into medicine because I got into it. My mother wanted me to do medicine. It was always something that she had aspired to do, and because of the sacrifices that she had to get me into some of the best private schools in Sydney, and then eventually getting into medicine, I felt that I was obliged to do that for her. But really, it wasn't what I was happy doing, and it was a struggle for me to go through that, not really dedicating myself and my time to really wanting to do something that I didn't even know I really wanted to do it. So I left medicine after 3 years, and went into a new course that was opening up at New South Wales Uni, which was around aviation. Aviation was my passion. I love flying. It was a new course that had come together around engineering. It brought in the best around aviation operations, as well as flying. So I ended up becoming a commercial pilot license, got my commercial pilot license out of that, completed my engineering degree, decided at that time that that's probably not an area that I wanted to go into. So it was really, one of the things when you first come out of school, it's a challenge to try to find the things that you really want to do. On the side, I also had my own business that I was running, and it turned out that that was going to be the area that I moved into. So, I had a computer business that I'd set up out of my garage at the time, building computers, and that sort of became a much, much bigger business. It became very successful. We grew and grew, started moving into networking, set up an internet service provider at the time, opened up a few other companies, acquired some companies in communications at the time, and grew that into quite a successful business. And that's where I found my passion. I really loved technology. I loved business. I loved being able to grow and expand a business. I loved defining a strategy of an organization and leading that. And it kind of shaped a lot of the things that I did later on in my life. But another thing that Thinra pointed out earlier as well is while I was doing medicine, I actually had an opportunity to work with some great people. So there was a job that was going for medical research. And I had absolutely no qualifications at the time. I was still a medical student. I didn't have any qualifications, but I thought I'd give that a go. I met with Professor Laurie Howes, who's a great professor. He believed in me at the time and gave me the opportunity to come and work with him. And we did some really groundbreaking medical research. So we were doing work in non-insulin dependent diabetes. We're looking at new medicine that was coming out, which is called metformin. And we did some really groundbreaking research that was published. So, I was probably the only person in all of the list of professors that were listed on those publications that didn't have any degree. So I had all these PhDs and all of these letters after their names, and I just had my name. So it was a great opportunity. It really felt like we were doing something valuable to the community, and through the new medicine, which was metformin, that we found that time was actually improving. A lot of the situations around the symptoms that were associated with diabetes, and it's still in use today. So that was one of my sort of sideboard projects. But unfortunately, when I moved into aviation, I had to stop that. It was a full-on course that had a combination of both university as well as flying. So that was the story around Follow the Heart, seizing opportunities. So I talked about building up a business which was doing quite well. It was a very successful business. We expanded. I'd gotten married at that time. Had my first child, and we're on the way to having our second one. But I found my life wasn't being fulfilled at all. It wasn't fulfilling in any way. I was working crazy hours, 16 to 18-hour days. I wasn't spending any time with my family, and we made the decision, my wife and I, that I needed to do something different. And it was a really hard point in my life where I'd set up this business. It was like my baby. I'd put a lot of investment into, a lot of time into it. And we decided on just essentially selling the business and going overseas. It was one of those decisions where difficult to make at the time, but when I look back, so many things happened because of that decision. Being open to try something different, being open to try a whole new opportunity where I wasn't sure of what the outcome was going to be, moving away from something that was stable and solid to moving into an opportunity that was didn't know where it was going to take us at the time. So we made a decision at the time. We moved over to Dubai. I was offered a role leading up being a general manager of a company called Intuitive. Did that for a few months. Since then, the company was acquired, and then they decided to pull out their interest of the Middle East. So here I am, wife and two small kids. Had Layla and Bella, who was 2 and 1 at the time, who were stuck in Dubai, in a place that we didn't really know anyone else. It was 7 months there, and without a job. So kind of stuck there and thinking, what do I do now? What do I do? Do we go back? And I was like, well, no, I'm not going to go back because everybody's waiting for us to come back. They all said that we're going to stay there for a couple of years, then we're going to return. But we thought, no, let's stick this out. By then I was eating into all our savings, and it was very expensive living overseas without a job. But I was very lucky and to find another role, and it was actually took me to Kuwait. They were looking for a CIO for a design firm, and at the time, actually, it was interesting because when I applied for the role, they were looking for an architect. So I applied thinking that they were looking for an IT architect, but what they were looking for was a design architect. So we got to talking, met the CEO of the company, and he said, well, no, we're actually looking for somebody to come in as well and take over the IT operations of the organizations. They were going through some growth at the time, and they needed somebody to do that. And that was growth into multiple countries. So that took me to Kuwait. And, a lot of really good things happened. And I think it was, from there that I managed to truly work with some of the experiences that I had before, but really opened up, an area of passion for me, which I didn't know at the time was an area of passion. And that was around some of the major projects that we worked on. So, being the CIO of the company, I decided to also, and I was looking, and we were outsourcing a lot of the work to IT consultants in other companies. So I spoke with the CEO and I said, well, why don't we do this ourselves? The quality is not that great. You can easily build up the capability to do this. So George Abihanna, he gave me total authority. He said, yep, go ahead and do it if you can do it. And that really exposed an area that I'd never really looked into or worked into. The projects we were working on in Australia were relatively small projects. The opportunities that we had in the Middle East were just massive, large scale iconic projects. We're working on smart cities, working on smart buildings, and got the opportunity to work on some really, really fundamentally changing projects. Worked on one of the first smart buildings in Kuwait, and I had a real passion for it. It was something I loved doing. Loved working with designers, looking at everything from the initial design phase all the way into the implementation and building of these buildings, and then operations and how that would sort of flow through. So, getting that ability to do that, I found that, this was something that I really, really enjoyed. And it was a lot of it, I had no prior knowledge. I'd not studied, architectural design. I hadn't studied extra low voltage design or mechanical engineering, but I was sort of in a position where, I really enjoyed what I was doing, and it just got me to start learning and learn about extra low voltage systems, learn about integrated platforms, learn about new ways of doing things, redefine the smart building blueprint. We won a lot of awards in the Middle East as well. Awards of the first smart building in Kuwait. Worked on the presidential palace in Abu Dhabi, worked on the Dubai Towers, worked on some really large projects there. And, that to me was probably one of the places in my life where I've really grown as a person and as an individual. I found a passion in something that I enjoy doing. I grew a lot in terms of my skill sets, acquired a lot of knowledge in that time, and really a lot of people along the way that helped achieve that. So, finding the right people that can help you and guide you, finding a passion of something that you do, just creates this energy within you that helps you keep propelling you forward and forward and forward and trying new opportunities. So that was my story around seizing opportunities, taking that opportunity to grow there. Since then I moved over into other roles, and that probably paved the way also to work with some global organizations such as Cisco and most recently at IBM. But it was all through that process, and by working with those organizations, which initially started in the Middle East, there was a lot of synergies in what I was doing as a consultant, working with those companies as vendors, and then moving over to a vendor and taking that mindset with how I actually work within those organizations. So yeah, and look, the last story is around find your sense of purpose. So I was talking to Shani just a little bit earlier, and we kind of share a similar story. So I was diagnosed with lung cancer about a year ago, and it was a bit over a year ago now. It was stage 2 lung cancer. And this was at the time of my career. I was just promoted within IBM. I was given the whole security business to look after. A lot was happening, and then this sort of happened. At the time, I didn't really think much of it. I was like, yep, okay. When I saw the oncologist on a Thursday, on Tuesday, I was in hospital getting surgery to remove that cancer. But it was very much a transactional process. Yes, I was going to deal with this. I was going to move on, and I was going to continue doing what I was doing. I had the operation. I was back at work within 5 days. Right, it was sort of like a very, very transactional, very systematic way of going about this. But as a detriment, around December last year, it actually got worse. Throughout this whole time, I was working, not really giving much attention to my health, and then was given the very rude shock awakening of the prognosis, which in December last year didn't look very promising. They'd given me 3 to 6 months to live at the time, and said, look, it's expanded. I had 3 liters of fluid in my lung, and malignant pleural effusion, and so forth. So at that time, I think it was my whole outlook and things started changing. I always thought, yes, I was going to get better. I did what I needed to do. I did the chemotherapy. I did whatever I needed to do, and everything's going to be great. But then in December, it wasn't that case. And we started looking, we had to start looking at other things or other alternative treatments, ways of doing things. I luckily met a very good oncologist in Sydney who recommended that we do some genome sequencing, which we did. So we did the genome sequencing, and it turned out that there was a mutation that luckily there was a treatment for. So, thankfully we started the treatment in January, and now all those tumors have been effectively shrunken, and I'm feeling as fit and healthy as ever, and things seem to be going in the right direction. But what it did make me realize is what is the purpose of life? I mean, we all get confronted with certain things at time, and I think one of the biggest confrontations you can ever have is your own imminent death, right? So when you need to think of that, you need to think of life and say, well, have I lived a fulfilling life? Have I achieved what it is that I really want to achieve in life? Have I really found purpose in what it is that I tried to achieve? And opened up businesses, was successful in businesses, had startups, organized those and ran multinational companies. But was that really what I wanted to do in life? Yes, I enjoyed it and I loved it. But finding that purpose, and what it allowed me to do is reprioritize. So other things in life started to become more important. And it was like, why am I sitting back and holding back from doing the things that I really want to be doing? So I reassessed a lot of things, finding that sense of purpose. My connection to my creator, for example, was one of the things that I found lacking in what I was doing in life. So that's one of the areas that I started investing a lot of time and effort in. Giving back became something that I really wanted to achieve, and everything I was doing in life was for the purpose of trying to benefit, and benefit others, right? So that's been, where I've started to change my perspective on life, but also looking at things that I could do within myself to improve myself, and things like, for example, nutrition. What am I doing around meditation? What am I doing around some other things that help you get better and get focused so that I can do the things that I enjoy in life? So look, that's my story in a nutshell. What I'd hope that some of that may be relevant to you and can benefit you. There are some key takeaways that I'd like to sort of leave you with. First and foremost, reflect, right? Acknowledge and embrace imperfections. We're not all perfect. We all have our limitations. Understanding what those limitations are allows us room to grow and improve and be better people than from where we are today, and affect all parts of our life, whether it's work, whether it's our home, whether it's what we want to achieve in life. Cultivate a sense of purpose and enjoy what you do. You're not going to be able to do great things in life if you don't enjoy what you do. When I look back in my career and look at the times where I felt that I really, really achieved something great, it was doing something that I loved and something that I enjoyed. And although a lot of time we stay in roles or in companies that we're not enjoying, we're struggling to get up in the morning. And when we get to that point, it's a time to ask yourself, am I really doing what it is I do? Could I be doing something more? Could I be doing something that's going to give me a lot more satisfaction out of my life? Because, if you really want to do something great, you've got to love what you do, right? It's really, really important. Taking on challenges and view challenges as opportunities. Get out of your comfort zone, right? If we're not going to get out of our comfort zone, we're not going to try things that don't make us feel secure all the time, we're not going to grow, right? Comfort and growth don't coexist. Right? You need to get out of your comfort zone, try something new, and it could be something small initially and then expand that out. Focus on the things you can control. A lot of our time is spent on things that we have absolutely no control of. My last role, that was one of the things that was very obvious to me, is that there was a lot of things we knew they were wrong. We knew that we had to do things differently, but they weren't in our control. So rather than waste your time on things that you can't control, focus on those things that you can control and do them well. Cultivate grit. So passion and perseverance for long-term goals. If you don't have grit, you're not going to stay the course, right? So develop that grit, develop that perseverance, continue investing your time and effort into those things that actually are meaningful for you. Ask for constructive feedback, right? People's feedback, it's really important to hear that. It helps you sort of hone in and fine tune what it is that you're achieving, it's really important. Appreciate the journey and not just the destination, right? Understand that we were going to go through that journey. We're going to learn new experiences. Be ready to learn from that journey. Be ready to learn from failures. Be ready to learn, along that path that it takes you. Last one here, well, second last one, is around helping people, right? So I found in my life, and for all of you out there who are leaders as well, it's really, really important that we help the people and help them succeed. We succeed when we inspire others. We succeed when we help others succeed, right? And that's one of the areas that to me has been, you know, a newly found passion, right? I mean, it's really important for me to be able to help others where I can. So whether it's in the workplace, whether it's outside of the workplace, you know, be inspired by others, help others grow as much as you possibly can as well. And ultimately be curious, right? Take risks, and ultimately have faith. So they're my key takeaways. You know, with that, I'll get back to you, Thurinder.
Thanks, Ali. And you are the smartest person I know. I keep telling you this, but you probably disagree. And I guess the question is that nature or nurture? Is that something which anyone can? You've done so many things in your life, and I seem to be able to absorb things so quickly. Is that things which people could do to just, you know, get better, and any other tips that you could provide?
No, look, absolutely. And look, I think there are different people that will have different capabilities in learning, right? I see that with my daughters and my children. You know, they're not all the same. You know, some of them are able to learn a lot quicker than others, and so forth. So I think that's normal in life, but it is nurture. Everything can be developed. Everything can be, you know, there's so much access to information today, whether it's the internet or whether resources that we've got available to us or courses that are available. You know, the ability to get access to that information and to develop yourself is limitless, right? So I absolutely think it's nurture. We all have the ability to learn, and as long as we put our mind to it, as long as we believe in ourselves, believe in the capability that we have to actually learn and grow.
And I guess also to your point, which you're saying, you know, around your personal journey with cancer, a lot of people might have seen that being so negative. And are you able to kind of talk a little bit more about the positivity? Because everything that you do, I feel, you know, there's so much good intent, and you always look at the bright side of things.
Look, absolutely. And I think, look, you know, I know nobody wants to have cancer, but for me, it was one of the most telling moments in my life. It was, you know, I'm thankful for going through what I've gone through. And, you know, had I not gone through that, I would not have had that rude awakening and had to really reflect on my own life. So for me, a lot of good has come out of it. I mean, I've met a lot of great people. I've met some people that, you know, just inspiring, you know, and it's stepping out of the rat race, getting involved, you know, work every day and just doing what you were doing and not really understanding what has meaning in life. For me, I felt that, you know, my diagnosis and subsequent prognosis, you know, that really opened up a world of opportunities for me to really start thinking about what it is I wanted to achieve in life. And that was a great thing. You know, it's never good to have, you know, a disease such as cancer. And I don't wish that upon anyone, but I think for me, it was a really defining moment in my life.
And like one final question from me is just how you use your time, because everyone only has 24 hours in a day. How are you able to get so much done so quickly?
Yeah, look, you know, in my younger days, I lived on less than 4 hours sleep. Now, I don't encourage anyone to follow that. You know, I would get up early in the morning. I mean, when you look at the time that we have, you know, a lot of people don't wake up till 7, 8 o'clock at night in the morning. So if you're getting up at 5:30 or 5 every morning, then it gives you some time in the morning to do some things. You know, I would always use that as a time to learn new things or reflect. I'm also a late sleeper, so I would do a lot of work at night. But, you know, I think today it's a lot easier to do things like multitask. If you look at, for example, I love reading and I love listening to Audible. You know, the ability to be able to drive your car and do something that's an autopilot effectively, but also listen to a great book. You know, we're able to do a lot more these days with those things. So I think rather than waste the time that we have, you know, use that time effectively in order to, you know, promote you and keep moving you forward. And
you also mentioned to me previously about your favorite book. Is that something which you would like to kind of touch upon?
Yeah, I don't know if it was my favorite. I think it was the most impactful book I had read at the time, and that was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. A great book for any of you who've read it. If not, I think it's a very recommended read. You know, it really started putting things in perspective for me, and just the structure and the framework that Stephen Covey, God bless his soul, uses is something that's really has been effective for me and had a big impact on me as a person.
Any of those in particular you want to share?
Yeah, look, I think it's the whole framework. So it's not necessarily just anything in particular, but the whole framework around putting first things first. Thinking of the end in the mind, even the concepts around thinking win-win. So whenever you're going into any form of negotiation, always think about not just what's right by you, think about the other person as well and how you can have a win-win outcome. So a lot, and then also sharpening the saw. I mean, if you look at all of the 7 habits that he talks about, all of them have a very applicable context in our life today, and allows us to sort of sit back and look at things from a different perspective.
Okay, and can I invite everyone to maybe ask any questions that you have? Just feel free to turn on your camera and ask from Ali.
Hi Ali, this is Tao. Thank you for sharing your story, and it's great news that you are cancer free. So very happy for you on that front. I just want to ask. So I find myself, wanting to go for the opportunity, go for the challenge, but then once I do it, I go back into my comfort zone. So it's that habit of like jumping, from one to another, one to another. What tips or strategy would you share around like just maintaining it and going outside of my comfort zone constantly, as opposed to like just jumping back and forth?
Yeah, I would say continue to challenge yourself. Right, so going back into your comfort zone means that you're not challenging yourself effectively. Right? Are you continuing to grow? Are you taking on a new role that, for example, gives you more responsibilities, areas of that you haven't, actually feel comfortable with? But I would challenge you to say, are you really going outside of your comfort zone? Right? If you're happy to sort of go back into that comfort zone, are you really doing something that's extending you beyond that point? Right, where you're actually forced to learn new things, where you're forced to develop yourself in new ways, where you're forced to actually extend beyond something that you can quickly go back into your comfort zone with. So that would be the question that I have for you. What kind of, how far are you extending yourself outside of that comfort zone?
So the fact that I'm going back into the comfort zone isn't actually taking on the challenge.
I would say so. I would say that you have the ability to stretch yourself more than that. Right? It's like a elasticity of it. You're in your comfort zone, and you've taken something that enables you to get back into your comfort zone very, very quickly. So are you taking on that challenge? Is that challenge big enough for you? Is that challenge really taking you out into those other zones where you're actually learning, where you're actually getting into the growth zone, or not?
Hey Ali, this is Aditya here. I wanted to ask you a question, specifically around when you how to manage your priorities, right? When you work, there are different priorities, and different people. No one that you want to disappoint, but how do you manage your priorities? What has been your mantra to basically go about managing multiple works at the same time, multiple competing priorities? I wanted to listen on that.
Yeah. Hi Aditya, good seeing you. It's been a while. No, so look, for me, priorities need to be value driven. I mean, sometimes we get caught up doing what's important for somebody else as opposed to what's important for us. Deep set, if you have your values around what's important for you to do, you find a lot of the time, and I had a big problem with this early on in my career, is saying no. Everybody comes in and says, well, you need to get this done and this done and this done and this done. And I would say, yeah, we'll do it. And then you end up being in a situation where you're spending so much time and effort and getting more stress and more stress and more stress, but you're not really finding yourself that you're achieving anything or moving forward in life. So my first advice to you would be say no when you can. If it's something that you don't really need to do, don't do it. And try to understand the difference between what somebody else's priority is as opposed to yours. So it might be really important for somebody else, but is that important for you, or is that really important in the larger scheme of things? And then work your time on things that are important. Quite often we spend our time doing things that are just urgent, always putting out fires. And the absence of spending time on things that are important tend to make us do those things. So, defining a good strategy, for example, or building up material that you can use, that you can reuse later on, rather than trying to do that every single time, and every single time you're reinventing the wheel, right? Try to build up strategies that can help you with those things. But what I tend to do, and this is most recently, is obviously, I look at things from a different perspective. I've reevaluated my values as well and what's important to me. You know, what's important to me, for example, you know, my family has taken a much higher priority than they used to. My work used to have higher priority, unfortunately, than my family. You know, so fill up my time with the things that are important for them. Primarily, they're the things that are important, and then fill in the times of other things. You know, quite often also, if you have competing things at work, my suggestion is to go and discuss that with your manager, right? If the manager comes in, and I know in your case, you get bombarded with a range of different things that you need to work on, but discuss that with your manager and say, well, these are all the things that I have to do. You know, realistically, I could only do these things. You know, help me prioritize what's important, right? And work with your manager on defining what they are from a work perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all right. Thank you. Good advice.
Yeah.
Monica, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think you might have just answered it in something you said then. But yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear about the fear zone and the learning zone. I think I've just thrown myself into the fear zone and I'm trying to do things to get into the learning zone. That struck a chord with me. I was just going to ask, looking back in your career, what would you have maybe done differently? And maybe it was the saying no and changing your priorities a little bit more towards the family. But yeah, what would you reflect on and think you could have done differently if you had that time again?
I mean, hindsight's always great, right? 20/20 vision in hindsight. So the experiences that I had, I think, after initially starting my own business and then working for multinational companies, I mean, that's been really, really valuable experience that I've learned along the way. So I guess for my career, I think I would have looked at my own business differently at that point. Having the knowledge and obviously going into business without having any sort of formal you know, experience or knowledge or qualifications to do so initially is always going to be a challenge. But what you do find is that when you do that, you're forced to learn so many different things. So you're not just focusing on one element, right? You're forced to learn HR, and you've got to learn about marketing, and you've got to learn about sales, and you've got to learn about the technical side of business and everything that's needed to run the business, financial aspects of it as well. So, you know, I think for me, saying that going into business before going into you know, some larger roles that I had gave me that broad context. However, working in larger organizations gave me the context around what it takes to build, you know, a sustainable large business. And had I taken that knowledge and put it back into my business, so I think I would say probably getting more formal education at the time, focusing on business rather than doing that later in life would have been one of those things. Not wasting time on doing things that I didn't need to do. You know, I got involved in a lot of startups at the time. Some of them were very successful, some of them were not. But yeah, spending a lot of time that could have been handled by somebody else, and really focusing on not necessarily working in the business, but working on the business. So being able to sort of step back, take that strategic perspective. You know, if I look back in my life and think, you know, I would have done that differently. I would have focused on different things. But besides that, I think, you know, decisions I made to go overseas, you know, I ended up spending 11 years overseas. I was only supposed to be there for 2. But the opportunities that presented itself, you know, and what I was doing there and learning and going to different countries and experiencing different cultures and traveling, got a chance to travel the world from overseas, which, you know, tends to be difficult for us in Australia. So, yeah, no, besides that, I think that's pretty much what I would do different.
Thank you.
Hi, Ali. I have a question. You have very interesting background learning different subjects. How do you weigh the decision of finishing something you started or realizing that you could be doing something better by not finishing this that you have started?
Yeah, look, I and this is probably a negative thing rather than a positive thing. I mean, I get bored with things very quickly. I'll start doing something, and then when I feel that, you know, I've got some level of mastery, I want to move on to something else, right? And that's always been me as a person. I think the education systems that we have in you know, in today's world sort of focuses on specific things only. But if you go back and look at the history, that's not the way that education was given. That's not the way that knowledge was acquired. They had the chance to do so many different things. So you would have somebody who works in engineering and medicine and also is a philosopher and so forth. So, you know, for me, my heart sort of led a lot of those decisions when I started feeling that, hold on, I can't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. It's not something that's really interesting me anymore. You know, whereas something else, I found a lot more passion doing, a lot more, you know, enjoyment out of that specific area, then I would make those changes. And sometimes it wasn't easy, right? Sometimes it was, you know, even leaving organizations where, I'll give you an example. When I was overseas, and I actually resigned the day I was made partner of an organization. So for SSH, they came back, they'd made me the partner, they gave me, huge potential increase, percentage ownership of the company. And then I made the decision to say, well, I resign, I don't want to be in this organization anymore. So there's been times when I've had to make those decisions because it didn't feel the right thing to do anymore. I wasn't happy with certain things, or certain culture or morals or ethics of an organization, and I didn't see myself subscribing to that anymore. Right? So making those decisions to sort of move on from a work perspective. But I think from a knowledge standpoint, I love learning new things, and if I go back to when I was a child, I would spend my time wanting to go and learn new things. I had a mechanic down the road, so I would sit with him and learn how he builds an engine and learn that, take that on board. I had somebody else who was building cars and fixing their bodies. I would do that. I had my neighbor who was building a house. I would be with him building a house. So I'd like to get knowledge wherever you can, and in many, many different things, many different areas.
I ask this because I have a bad habit of reading a few books at the same time. And so sometimes I struggle, should I finish this book first and before I move to the next? And hear your experience of learning different things, just like, do you actually finish the book you started, or would you?
Not every time.
Like,
I have the same
investment.
Well, look, I have the same bad habit, to be honest. I think I've got about 4 books at the moment that are still, 3 chapters in one, 2 in the other, a few other ones. But thank God for Audible. I can then do other things while I'm listening to a book.
Right, thank you.
Hi, Ali. Do you mind if I ask you 2 questions?
Absolutely, go for it.
First one, man, how do you keep that silver hair, man? It looks so cool.
Yeah, it was black at one point.
Oh man, looks so cool. So my question is, how would you advise us of dealing with failure? More like speak open and honest about things, right? Because for us, we do have we sometimes scared of failing, or we have ego, or things that sometimes get in the way of try something, fail, and own the failure or speak about it, right? Sometimes it's about shame as well. You have a whole life experience on that. What would be your advice in just embrace and be open about it?
Yeah. Look, I think I challenged myself with that early on in my career as well. So I had fear of failure. It was one of the main things that probably prevented me in the early stages from doing a lot more than I wanted to do. Failure is one of those things that you learn a lot from. So, culturally, sometimes it's also different. Different cultures, and we have from different backgrounds, and sometimes, it's taboo. You can't talk about failure, you can't fail. But, accepting and learning the lessons from failure is what's really, really important, right? If you're not failing, it means you're not doing enough. You're not getting out of your comfort zone. Because, if you're in your comfort zone, that's an area of safety and control, and you're not failing. That's by definition, that's your comfort zone. And, until you actually start failing and learning from that failure and using that failure to actually feed back into, your own personal growth, and then growing from that, then you're not really growing as well. So, it will take time. It will take challenges, right? Give yourself challenges, be prepared to fail. Right, and relook and doing those things, and look at all successful people in life. They weren't successful from day one, right? I think it was Thomas Edison who said it. He learned 1,000 different ways about how not to make a light bulb, right? If he hadn't failed that many times and he got it right the first time, then he probably wouldn't have developed what he developed and how he developed it. So it's really important for us to be inspired by failure. Try to understand exactly why it was failed. How can we learn from it? What can we take away from that? How can we implement those lessons in our lives in the next time that we try something new?
I have a question or 2. Hi, thank you for your presentation. It's been really valuable for me and hopefully everyone else here. I had 2 questions. So firstly, how do you share and inspire others to develop a growth mindset? I do have a few friends that, I realize they have so much potential, and that things are stopping them because they're in the comfort zone. So that's my first question. And my second question is kind of leading on to, how did you know about growth mindset, and when did you realize this was something that you had to implement and, you know, work on, I guess, in training your mind to not be in that fixed comfort zone, which I myself feel like I was very stuck in until like last year.
Okay. In terms of how I inspire others, you know, I've had the privilege of being in multiple leadership roles. And, you know, one of the areas, you know, I like to, with all of the employees that were under my responsibility, if you like, you know, my leadership style is always to push them to achieve more than what they're doing. You know, identified potential in certain people, and like as you mentioned, you know, you've got friends that have the ability to do more, as far as you know. I would push them into certain roles which I knew was out of their comfort zone. And you know, what's been great along the years is really looking at people being in certain roles and extending themselves and developing into great, you know, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's whether in sales, whether it's in design, whether it's in development, really taking them outside of that comfort zone and really pushing them into those certain areas. So, you know, I guess, you know, as being a leader, that's something that I've been privileged with, the ability to be able to do that, to push, you know, staff into certain areas and say, well, look, yeah, let's try something different. How about you give this a go? How about you try this? You know, what about this new role? You know, yes, it's going to be a lot more, but you know, I know that you could do more. So I really like to push and stretch the people I work with. In terms of when did I know? So, I mean, look, the concept of growth mindset for me was only introduced as a concept. I only came familiar with it a couple of years ago. You know, it's more sort of looking retrospectively in my life and saying, well, that's something that I've always had. I mean, even if I take it back to school, I mean, I would always look at learning a new topic, saying, look, if somebody else can learn this and somebody else has developed this, and there's no reason why we can't learn it, right? We all have the ability as humans to you know, we all have the intellectual capability to be able to learn whatever we put our mind to, right? So I always had that belief, you know, fundamental belief that I could learn whatever it is that I wanted to learn because somebody else has already learned it. So it can't be that hard, right? You know, but yeah, so as a framework, really only in the last couple of years, and then sort of adopted that retrospectively. I guess another part of your question, I mean, there's areas of a growth mindset that I still have to improve.
Yeah.
Things like my relationships, for example, right? It's not just about work. But you know, taking the new lessons of it, you know, reading some of Carol Dweck's work, you know, she gives a great TED speech around the power of yet, right? So just being able to, when you're even communicating with others, to use the word yet, right? You know, you haven't achieved this yet, which means that you still got potential to achieve it, and we're still expecting you to achieve it, but you just haven't got to where you got to at this stage.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I really love that, the use of the word yet. So just touching upon what you said, obviously you do a lot of work and you own a lot of, you know, do a lot of business and everything. So then how do you deal with, I guess, seeing a project not from the large perspective, because that can get quite overwhelming. So what are your tips on seeing it from, you know, the small steps and actually achieving it in the end?
Yeah. So I mean, look, the path of a million miles starts with the first step, right? You've got to start somewhere, and quite often when you break things down into smaller consumable chunks and deliver those, then you feel, you know, number one, inspired to do the next piece of work that you need to do, and so on and so forth. So absolutely, you know, having big pieces of projects to deliver, you need to break them down into sizable chunks that you can deliver quickly, and then put your focus into doing each one of those. And you'll find is that as you start to achieve, when you start to complete a task, then the next task becomes easier, and the next task becomes easier, and the next task becomes easier. So it's one of those things around procrastination, for example. I talk to my kids about this all the time. You know, getting up and actually starting to do something is generally the hardest thing, but when you start to build up that momentum, and then you find that it's sort of just it flows on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Just on the chat, she also said that she gets really bored after some mastery and skills she's learned in. How, even in the position she's moved into, how does she navigate boredom?
How do you navigate boredom? Yeah, look, it's a good question. And I think, I mean, the way that I kind of tend to do that is when it gets to the point that I'm feeling bored in a particular thing, it means I'm not focused on what it is that I'm doing. So I like to step away from that. Like to practice mindfulness, for example, just something to refocus, and then try to go back to it with a more refreshed sense of purpose. But also try to limit time that you allocate to something, right? I find sometimes boredom sets in when I allow a lot of time to do something. You know, I thinking of a million miles an hour in many different areas. So trying to get focus for me has always been something difficult. You know, and I quite often get bored doing that. But then I guess the question is back to you around what is it that's making you bored? Is it something you're reading? Is it something you're doing in life? Is it work that you're doing? You know, and so forth. So, you know, understanding what it is that's making you bored, and then doing something about it, I guess it's important.
So basically, I just got into a new role and it's quite repetitive. So it gets quite, it's a new role, yes, it's exciting, and you think you're gonna learn something new, but after like a short time period, you're like, I think I got it. Like, okay, what do I go to now? I'm getting really like, what's a new challenge?
Yeah. Okay. So it's either time to start a new role or time to find additional things that you can do within that role. So, you know, it reminds me when I was, you know, CIO of an international consultancy firm. Operations were moving fine. Yep, we've got that down pat. Everything's working fine. Full monitoring systems, everything up and running. I wasn't excited doing that anymore, but I found a new opportunity. That new opportunity was to build a consulting business, and we built that consulting business and grew it to over 1,000 people. You know, in less than 5 years. So, you know, that to me was something that became more enjoyable. Yes, it was still a role, but I gave myself a little bit more responsibility. So do you have an ability to expand into new areas? Do you have an ability, you know, to try something new, to extend your remit, for example? You know, looking at those kind of options, but, you know, nobody wants to be doing the same thing over and over again. You know, mundane tasks, you know, become subconscious. You can do that, and it becomes quite easy to do it. But if you're finding that you're not being you know, inspired by the work that you're doing, then, you know, I would suggest probably, you know, relook at what you're doing, or potentially trying to extend your remit.
All right, thank you so much.
Hey Ali, it's Patrick here. I was just wondering, what's your view on the, I guess, the corporate rat race, without sounding too cynical? And I guess the second part is like, how would you go about trying to, I guess, beat that, I guess, aspect or notion?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been in the corporate rat race for a few years now. So yes, I agree. But I think, you know, they're not all the same. You know, different organizations and being involved in that corporate rat race tend to be slightly different. Some organizations, it can become a very toxic environment, whereas others, you have sort of compensating components that make it more exciting. I mean, the people that you work with, for example, looking at it from a different perspective, you know, trying to develop those relationships, connecting with people, you know, re-looking at how you're actually doing things rather than doing things in a systematic way, just like everybody else, getting on the wheel and just keep rolling every day. You know, how can you make that something more inspiring? You know, that's tend to be the way that I've tried to look at it, but also trying to find different challenges around things that excite me. You know, whether it's trying to fundamentally change a business or trying to fundamentally, you know, bring about growth in a specific area or do something different. But, you know, if you don't enjoy what you do, it's really difficult to maintain, you know, that level of excitement in what you do every day.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that opinion. That's good.
Thanks, Ali. So we will be wrapping it up, and thank you everyone for joining. Please feel free to share your LinkedIn details and connect with each other. Ali, would you be comfortable with anyone reaching out to you?
Yeah, feel free to share my details any time. If there's anything I can help with, I'm more than happy to help. I mean, this is all about you guys, and I hope that, you know, maybe there was something I said that you know, resonates with you or might help you, you know, whatever decision you need to make in your life. But, you know, absolutely reach out. You know, I've got a lot of time on my hands at the moment, so more than happy to help.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. And in a couple of weeks' time, PDF will be lucky to have Oscar Trimboli, and he will be talking about listening to your career superpower.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Wang, the founder of the Professional Development Forum.
PDF was established to help young diverse professionals find fulfillment in the modern Australian workplace.
By asking questions to the most successful, influential and inspirational people we knew.
We were inspired by their stories of tenacity and passion.
We learn about the creative approaches to overcome challenges.
We believe that everyone, not just the elite few, should have access to the knowledge, mindset, and network to develop themselves.
By becoming the best version of ourselves, we lead a happier, more fulfilling life and inspire those around us to do the same.
Moving our events online has made us more accessible than ever. We share what we learned on our website, YouTube channel, and podcast. So please share this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell. We look forward to seeing you at an upcoming event.